Western countries only believe in the law of the jungle. They do not believe in China's peaceful rise. There are also many Chinese people who do not believe in peaceful rise. But China is practicing peaceful rise step by step. Following the signing of a $30 billion cooperation agreement between China and Saudi Arabia, China and the Gulf Cooperation Council, GCC, have reached cooperation in RMB oil settlement. This is another major victory for the yuan. As we all know, the petrodollar system is the foundation of American hegemony. At one time, in order to get rid of the petrodollar system, Saddam took the initiative to settle in petro-euro. In addition, Gaddafi also wanted to get rid of the petrodollar system and chose to take the gold oil route. Later, we all know their fate. Then, why does the GCC dare to collectively challenge the United States and openly announce that it will engage in RMB settlement with China? In addition, this is not just Saudi Arabia, but the 6 GCC member states collectively want to settle oil RMB with China. Aren't they afraid to follow the same old disastrous road of Saddam and Gaddafi? Aren't they afraid that the United States will launch another Middle East war? That and more is exactly what we are going to talk about today. Let's get started. The members of Gulf Cooperation Council include Saudi Arabia, the United Arab Emirates, Qatar, Kuwait, Oman, and Bahrain. All of them are Islamic Sunni countries. They have serious religious conflicts with Shia Iran. The leading country of the GCC is Saudi Arabia, but it does not have absolute authority within the GCC. Although Qatar is a small country, it has a high level of modernization and has the largest Udeid airbase stationed in the Middle East by the United States. Therefore, Qatar often disagrees with Saudi Arabia on various matters. In order to isolate Qatar, Saudi Arabia plans to invest $1 billion to build a canal to cut off the land border between Saudi Arabia and Qatar, directly turning Qatar into an island country. The original intention of the establishment of the GCC was to respond to Iraq's invasion of Kuwait and exercise the right of collective self-defense. Later, Iraq was defeated. The collective defense needs of the GCC have declined, and the GCC has also accepted some economic cooperation projects, such as education, culture, and labor cooperation, to actively promote the economic integration of the GCC. However, the GCC countries are generally very wealthy, and despite internal conflicts, they will try to avoid using force. Interestingly, the United Arab Emirates and Bahrain have not resumed diplomatic relations with Qatar so far, and they are still angry. So, how can such a loose Arab collective defense organization abandon prejudice and unite in a comprehensive and extensive economic cooperation with China? There is only one reason: the common interests of China and the GCC are too great. China is the world's largest oil importer, and the Persian Gulf is the world's largest oil exporter. A large part of the Gulf countries' oil is sold to China. Among them, Saudi Arabia is the world's largest oil exporter. The largest trading partner of Saudi Arabia is China, the largest trading partner of the UAE is China, and the largest trading partner of Qatar, Oman, Bahrain, and Kuwait are all China. No matter how many frictions and differences there are within the GCC, cooperation with China has become the greatest common denominator of all GCC member states. The main products exported by the GCC to China are oil, natural gas, and plastics, while the main products exported by China to the GCC are electromechanical, clothing, and machinery. Although China is the country with the largest trade surplus in the world, in the China-GCC import and export trade, the GCC is the one with the trade surplus. Because they have a lot of oil and gas resources, a small population, and little consumer demand. In the petrodollar system, the cooperation between the GCC and the United States is not willing, but the core interests that are forced to be surrendered in order to purchase security services from the United States. The United States has military bases in Saudi Arabia, Qatar, Kuwait, the United Arab Emirates, Oman, and Bahrain. In other words, the U.S. military is the most powerful support for the petrodollar. Without a strong U.S. military, the petrodollar system cannot exist. In 1974, the United States and Saudi Arabia secretly signed the Unshakable Agreement, and Saudi Arabia promised to use the US dollar as the only designated currency for oil exports. This opened the curtain of the petrodollar system, which has continued to this day. The basis for the US dollar to become the world currency is that it is the only or largest designated currency in the Gulf oil export trade. But now, the GCC is willing to cooperate with China in RMB oil, which means the uniqueness of the US dollar has been broken, and the US dollar will usher in a strong competitor. If China's import of GCC oil can bypass the US dollar settlement system and settle directly in RMB, China's energy security will be a great success. The US dollar blockade strategy against Russia will not be able to stop the achievement of the renminbi. Because the renminbi has already won Iran, Russia, and Venezuela, and now it has won the GCC, the world's major oil exporting countries are basically settled, and the international credit of the renminbi will be greatly improved. After Russia was kicked out of the dollar and euro settlement system by the West, its foreign trade can basically only rely on China, India, and Turkey. A core reason is that the Russian ruble is not wanted in international trade. In order to do business with India, Russian merchants have no choice but to charge Indian rupees. This is the tragedy of a big country. In the future, China will be able to pay directly in RMB when buying Gulf oil. Perhaps, the RMB payment quota will not fully replace the US dollar, but a breakthrough in the GCC is a great success. So, why is the GCC not afraid of US retaliation? In the China-GCC joint statement, there is such a sentence: set up the China-GCC Peaceful Use of Nuclear Technology Forum, jointly build the China-GCC Nuclear Security Demonstration Center, and train 300 peaceful use of nuclear energy and nuclear technology talents for the GCC countries. The key word is Nuclear Security Demonstration Center. This is not an ordinary nuclear power plant construction. The so-called nuclear security is simply a nuclear umbrella. I guess that this nuclear security demonstration center is most likely to land in Saudi Arabia or the United Arab Emirates. The strongest support for the petrodollar system is the US military, and the strongest support for the RMB oil system is naturally inseparable from the Chinese People's Liberation Army. Without a strong army, it is impossible to establish a strong international common currency. At present, the Russia-Ukraine war has dragged the European Union into the problems, and distracted the main attention of the United States to Eastern Europe, and the independence of the Middle East has been released. The Middle East is also willing to seize the great opportunity for the United States to leave the Middle East, reduce its dependence on the United States, introduce China, balance the United States, and gradually move towards an independent domestic and foreign policy. China took a crucial step to leverage the petrodollar without firing one shot. After 20 years, let's look back at today. Perhaps this is a critical turning point for the RMB to go global. Well, thanks for listening. If you have any suggestions, just leave them in the comments section. We'll come back as soon as possible and check them, and then we'll give feedback. See you next time.